So, I took a day trip and got to see a really cool exhibit on the history of games. Obviously, I left inspired as hell, and also eBay hates to see me coming. My wish list is so much longer now because there are so many incredible games and horrible ones that I had no idea ever existed. So, I have three big ideas that I wrote down that have the most fleshed out in my head. And we're going to do one today. We're going to be kind of reinventing the wheel and be letting ourselves be inspired by the first piece in the exhibit, which is a big kind of vitrine, like a mini exhibit focused on Tetris. So we're going to be making our own Tetris inspired game, but it's going to be a board game. As I have started recording now, I kept seeing Jellybean. Hi, Jellybean. Hi. She's so happy to meet you. She's happy to be here. She's here. She's pink. She's perfect. People say that about me too. Anyway, I kept looking at Jellybean here, and I was like, you know, it would also be a really cute skin for a Tetris game. Is little circus animal crackers. Look at her. She's a diva, and she deserves to be the star of her own game. I think so. So maybe I'll doodle on that afterwards. But I got home and I was really hungry because I hadn't really eaten breakfast this morning, which was my bad. And so I grabbed some tortilla chips and some hummus, and my tortilla chip kept breaking. I loaded up with way too much hummus. I have salsa habits that I cannot break, and I scoop like a motherfucker. And so it kept breaking, and it kept breaking obviously in different ways. So, you know, sometimes just the tip of the chip would be left in my hand, or sometimes it'd be like half, or it would break kind of like down the middle, and like, you know, like the rest is like kind of stuck in the dip. But then when I would, you know, manage to get it out, I'd be like, oh, more of the dip has been cleared. And I was like, chips and dip but make it Tetris? So, obviously, the exhibit had a lot to say about Tetris, which was really cool. But one thing that I learned that I wasn't aware of before is that in 1991, they actually made a Tetris board game. You know, I love a vintage board game. I collect vintage board games. There is a cute little pink ottoman over there that is actually a big storage chest that is about 80% full of my current collection of vintage board games, which doesn't necessarily take a lot because board games are quite big. But as you guys know, I also love designing board games, and I love being designed by vintage stuff. You can see some of my designs there. You could actually, if I was in the office area, see one of my board games up on the wall behind me because I print a lot of my board games as posters. So that's kind of the idea that I'm having for this, is to kind of reinvent the wheel of Tetris, which is to say find a way to design a Tetris that is not just a new skin, but is a Tetris-inspired original game, because reinventing the wheel is actually not that easy. When you're trying to do your take on something really beloved or really well-known or both, it's really easy to just kind of accidentally create a new skin for the product, which has a lot of value in itself, because that's basically, for a lot of games, especially TTRPGs and stuff and board games, basically like what a hack or what a new edition or something is. For board games, we have that a lot with like the game Labyrinth, right? There's like a million editions of Labyrinth out there, but it is the same game. It's just a different theme. There's Labyrinth Classic, there's Labyrinth Junior, there's Labyrinth Pokemon Edition, which I have Labyrinth, like the normal one, but I do really want the Pokemon one like a lot. The one that I haven't seen yet that I would love to work on is a Scooby-Doo Labyrinth game. I would love that. I have a lot of ideas for it. I'm a really great designer. Please hire me. Another dream project just out there. I love making new skins for things as well. I love hacking things. I love hacking TTRPG systems as well. But with this, for Tetris, I want to do something that puts my own mark on it a little bit more than just a new skin. I am really, really, really captivated by a lot of the vintage board game versions of things that are not usually board games, because often they're products that actually are not really around anymore still, because they did the adaptation back in like the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, maybe the 2000s. And since then, I mean, it just isn't out there anymore. It's not published anymore. And so it gets kind of forgotten. But it takes a lot. It takes a lot of creativity. It takes a lot of thought, a lot of planning to translate what is like usually, for example, a video game into a board game. And so I thought it would be really fun to kind of honor the creative process that went into the Tetris board game, because that is not an easy thing to board game, and design based on that. So we're making a Tetris inspired board game. I do have a doodle. Ignore the chip in the doodle. I was just kind of trying to see how my art style would work with chips. But the first version of this is kind of a solo board. But I'm going to be changing that now, I think, because the actual original board game for Tetris is actually a two-player game. I looked it up on eBay, my best friend, and basically couldn't get like a big good picture of the rules, but a lot of the general gist of the game is on the front of the game cover. The game cover is a little from 1991, but you can kind of see that it's actually as if you were pointing, like if you play Tetris like on your phone or whatever, if you're pointing your phone at your friend's phone and you're just kind of playing at it from both sides. So my initial thought when I was dealing with my chips and the chip breaking, and I was like, what about this but Tetris? I was like, okay, it's because every time a chip breaks, it gets stuck in the sauce. And sometimes it breaks in multiple pieces. And then like I have a piece in my hand. Maybe I can scoop up the biggest piece with the piece in my hand, but there's still like a piece left over in the sauce. And you have to make sure that you get that with the next chip. This is where the OCD comes out and the autism. But you have to make sure you get that in the next one, or it's going to start getting soggy. Or what if it moves around and then I forget it in there and it just stays in there and it gets soggy and gross? And I hate that. Who likes that? It's gross. I don't want to open the hummus in 2 days and then be like, oh my God, like, yay hummus bite. And then have like a 3-day-old piece of chip in there. Ew. So, obviously, that would be for me in the game. The bad ending is if you are just overwhelmed with pieces of chip in the dip, to where it's like getting a little bit of like a crunchy texture. Obviously, it's like hyperbolic, but it's a game. And then what you obviously want to do is clear out all the chips, which is basically what you want to do in Tetris. Is you want to clear out the rows, clear out the rows, clear out the rows. So I was like, okay, I like this. I think there's potential here. I think the chip shapes could be really fun to design and play with. But how do we visually translate that? And so initially I was thinking solo, but then I was like, you know what? I get why they did duo design for the board game, because I thought about like sitting down and playing like the board game, which is paced obviously a lot slower if you're playing by yourself for Tetris. And I was like, that's boring. And you don't want that in game design. But you know what's not boring? You know what's actually very serious is when you are very hungry and you have a close friend who is also very hungry, and there is one bowl of dip, and now it is a fight to the death of who can get enough or most of the dip before the dip is gone, or before it has been completely contaminated with chip bits. Now that gets my blood pumping. Also spikes my anxiety a little bit, but in a fun way. And so I was thinking, I had initially designed this board like for sketch to have this like bowl of guac, basically, at the bottom. That if you were playing solo, the chips would fall down into the guac and you would try to like, get basically a whole chip's worth of things, scoop them out, right? But now I'm thinking we put the guac in the middle and we're both trying to get from it. And we're both trying to clear out all of our chips and get the most guac, which also means that I need to find a visual way to translate or to track the guac that is disappearing, because a board game is not animated and I don't want to program a video game for this. I want to make a board game. I love being a game designer, because what do you mean? I had never thought of this before today. And then I saw an exhibit and I had a snack, and now we're about to get a brand new game I'm so excited about and I can't wait to play. This is the best. not only did I make a mistake when I placed the grid, which I did with a risograph brush, which is basically the digital equivalent of like wood stain. Like it's just once it's in there, it's stained. You can't just erase a part and then put it back. It doesn't work like that. You have to do the whole thing over. I'm also fairly certain that I accidentally did not, yeah, that's not the middle. That's not the middle. That's not the middle. That's an empire waste on a board game. I have to redo at least half of the grid all over again. Even though I just spent 20 minutes just doing the coloration. The good news is I figured out how I want to handle the chips like as cards. I find myself when I design board games legitimate. I know I mentioned it earlier, but I do find myself thinking about Labyrinth a lot because I find the board design and mechanic design of Labyrinth so incredibly satisfying, both in a tactile, autistic way and as a like designer. And so I'm always yearning for games where the cards or tiles have a meaningful, mechanically meaningful, it looks like I'm a witch, mechanically meaningful positioning on the board. I yearn for Magic the Gathering is I guess what's really happening. I have another board game that is still in development that also requires the cards to be placed in very specific spots on the board, and the art for that lines up as well. So I'm very excited about that, but you'll get a video about that when I do that one later this year. I'm gonna count the spaces. I'm gonna count the spaces and redo the grid, and then we can move on to the cards, aka the broken like tortilla chips, which I might sacrifice myself to have some tortilla chips and, you know, let them break and be inspired by the shapes that they make. I think that'd be fun. I'm also thinking it might be snack time. So I was able to fix the board because once I did the math, it was actually a lot quicker and easier because I forgot that while I used a risograph brush for everything else, I didn't use a risograph brush for the solid beige piece in the middle that's supposed to be like the clay bowl that the guac is in. And so I was able to find the right spot to cut, delete the parts that were wrong, move the entire thing down, move first and then cut, and then flip the part that was correct and hide the messy and ugly seam under the thick solid piece that I had painted before. That's not risograph brush, so thank you for looking out past me. So for the pieces, I'm thinking of doing more than just a traditional Tetris shape, which those are the two L's, the square shape. They've got the zigzag where it's like 1, 1, 1, 1. And then they have the middle finger is what I like to call it. The one that's like 3 flat and then 1 in the middle. But Tetris is not created in a vacuum. There are older games that it's inspired by. I think one of them also like at which they had some of the precursors at the exhibit. And I think one of them is called like Pentomino. I might be getting that wrong, but I can put a picture here. And that one has like a shape that I really like, and it kind of looks like a W. Like if you put it on its side, it's like a W. Obviously, it would fall like in a straight way, so it's just kind of like stairs. I like that a lot. That looks complicated, cunty, and annoying. I love it. So I'm definitely thinking about incorporating some of the shapes that Tetris doesn't use anymore, and also I'm trying to think about like colors as well, maybe for some of the big pieces, because like we have like obviously like the classic tortilla chip, but I also love a blue corn chip. I love a blue purple like tortilla chip. And so I was like, maybe some of the bigger pieces could be blue corn chips. So give it also a little bit of like visual variation, you know? So I'm gonna do two things now in order to design the game pieces. One, I'm going to doodle mock-ups of the game piece shapes and slots and sizes on this mat to see how many stones, basically how many like pieces would fit on average across the board, and see if I need to adjust the grid size, which is something I should have done before coloring it. But that's okay, because it's a process and we're learning. So I'm gonna do that, probably adjust the board slightly to be a little bigger. And then we're going to do the tiles that'll be cut out to put on the boards, the ones that slot. So those won't be like simple playing cards with like the thing on them or tiles with the thing on them. They're going to have to be like actually the shape. Like they're going to have to be fully just little pieces of tortilla chip Tetris shape. And then from those shapes, I will then make a separate sheet of the cards that you're gonna pull to tell you which, like, how to lay out your board to start. Also, the mechanics of the board game for Tetris actually involve stacking as much as you can on top of each other, not clearing the board, and trying to encroach on your opponent's space so they can't build anymore. So that seems really hard to track, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, there's little trackers on the side of the board, but like, damn, you gotta be vigilant. So I'm doing the opposite. I'm sticking with the notion of you wanna clear out the chips, because you want to not have chips in there, and assumedly if you ate all of your chips, you also like cleared out the guac. I'm still working on how to visualize that you ate the most stuff in this. Okay. Oh my fucking god. It almost swung open and that would have hit me so hard in the face. For a second I thought I saw my life flash before my eyes, but that was just the screen brightness. So we're not even gonna aim this at my face. So I redid the screen and it's kind of this like goldeny color now, because I felt like, first of all, the all green was really hard to look at digitally for sure. Then I felt like in print the contrast wouldn't really be there, so you wouldn't really understand that this is like guac if the whole board is like green. This looks white right now on camera, but it's not. It's like tan. It's like cardboard colored, so it'll look more like that. I can put up like a little picture next to it here too, not just like this recording of the screen. And I felt like with this being dark and this being green and this being like a different green and stuff, that it made it like difficult to understand where you're playing from, because you're playing from here and it's building outwards and you're trying to eat towards it because you're trying to eat towards the guac, which earlier I was like, I don't know how to translate that again anymore. And I was like, it's because you've gotten your board upside down in your head. You're playing towards the middle. It's fine. It's visually very clear, actually. So as for the corn chip designs, I did the little test thing of like the shapes. That's that little like shape thingy. I didn't see that in the Tetris. In the Tetris game anymore. That was the shape that I talked about. I was like, I like that. That's cool. These are more classical Tetris shapes. We'll see if I do anything else, but I honestly think this covers a lot. I mean, we are trying to reinvent the wheel, but we're not trying to like bust it up. So this is the base shapes that I'm going to be making. And I went with the idea of like plain tortilla chip, red corn tortilla chip, blue corn tortilla chip. So those are kind of like the grid and the pattern and coloring that these shapes are going to have. Obviously these are like doodled, so they're really ugly. So the idea is that you pull a certain amount of cards each on both sides, like to start with, and they get laid down like at random, basically. And then from there you take turns pulling cards, putting places down, trying to fill things up. Now I need to figure out a way to play through, like, what if you line stuff up, but you can't just, like, cut the pieces apart, you know, to, like, delete it like you would in the game. So you can shove it in a little, but that's not going to, like, you know, that's not going to work for the ones that are, like, 3 things tall. So working on how to do that here. I literally specifically said at the beginning of this video, though, that reinventing the wheel correctly is not easy. So in a sick, twisted game dev way, I'm actually very excited about figuring out how to solve the problem of playing towards subtraction with physical pieces that cannot disappear. So that means that I need to change what qualifies for the subtraction of the piece, which also means that I might need to redesign the piece shapes. Time to have some tortilla chips as a snack, I think, and see what shapes they make. There has been a development, which is that I refined the, girl, please, okay. I refined the shapes. And this, isn't it cute? Isn't it cute? I love being an artist. I refined the shapes and the designs and stuff and the sort of pattern and the color of the shapes. I think it looks amazing. Here's the issue. I really do not want to make a video game because I did not account for the time and energy that it would take for me to make this into a video game. It's not like I've never done it before at all. I just haven't done it in 13 years. So it would be a new software for fuck sure. I'm saying this because designing a multi-level board game that works on a principle of subtraction mechanics, that's physically not capable of enacting those mechanics without fundamentally changing the assets and therefore fundamentally changing the game into not a Tetris game. Because what you could do is be like, okay, well then we'll change the rules. So one thing you could do is like, okay, then it's the colors. The colors have to line up. You make smaller tiles colors. You know what that is? Fucking like Bejeweled. We're not playing, I mean, Bejeweled has the switch mechanic like famously, but there's also like those ones where it's like the Tetris-y ones where it's like a little color thing that like shoots out and you have to try to aim the little thingy to make all the like purples and all the blues and stuff touch, and when like 3 or 4 touch they like explode. And that would be pretty easy to make here. That's not Tetris, because Tetris, fundamentally a Tetris game is about shapes. It's about shapes. So instead of, because I just don't want to do the addition principle. I don't like it. It feels anti-Tetris to me. I know the official board game uses it. I don't care. I don't like it. So if not addition and if not physical subtraction, you have to ask yourself, well, what else is there? So here's my idea. 2 things. 1, we revisit the story of the game, because technically currently all mechanics and everything in the game is based around the fact that the story of the game, so you have a bowl of guac and you have chips. Chips are not super structurally sound. You have an enemy, one of your friends that's also hungry. Same thing. And you want the guac that you want. You want the amount that you want. You want to have it in peace. You don't want to have a bunch of somebody else's crumbs in there. You don't want your own crumbs in there. You've got a lot going on mentally. You might have OCD. And so you're trying to eat as successfully, as crumlessly, and as quickly as possible to beat out your mortal nemesis. Which is why there's 2 sets of the game. So the game is building these chips out from the guac where they're, touching it, crumbing, breaking into it. And you're dealing with these leftover pieces of chip that you're trying to like get enough together. Because sometimes what I do is I really don't want to do a visual demonstration of this, so I really hope you understand. Is that like when there's like the hummus or the dip or the avocado or whatever, and the chip breaks off in it, and sometimes it's too little or too awkward to get with your finger, so you eat the chip that you have, and you go in with a second chip. Sometimes that breaks also, but big enough that you can take that chip that's broken behind, that you were like scooping behind the chip piece, and then the chip piece that you still have, and you can kind of like pincher the situation, and you have like this 3-layer broken chip that you can then save, and then there's no chip in the dip. So we revisit the story of the game to see if there's any adjustment, as minor as possible, that we can make to the story of the game to incorporate or to accommodate mechanic design. Number 2, and this one I have to play with a lot to figure out. Like this one, this step will simply need prototype testing. That is it. That is the only way to figure this step out. And that is to adjust what the qualifier is for a road to be cleared. Because I've now designed all of these pieces to be 2 apples tall, basically. And there's technically one piece that's only 2 apples tall if it's laying, and it's 3 apples tall if it's upright. That's the one that's like the middle finger one. I am still thinking about if I just make like a rule that one can only be like middle finger up, middle finger down. And it can't be like, or like, So, censoring that's going to be really fun. And, that leaves us with all pieces being 2 apples tall. Unlikely to be able to very easily clear the very bottom roll here. But I'm thinking, and this is again something that the probabilities I have to play out in order to figure out what they are, to see if it makes the game go by too fast, if it makes it too easy. But it could be that like, it's like, okay, well, if you can make a row touch all the way through on just one square level, then like that square level and the one beneath it. Oh, fuck, wait. That wouldn't work. No, it would work. The language would need to be very specific. Let me show you on the game board. So, to explain, this is like the bottommost row, and this is like number 2, number 3, number 4. I just put these places down, not like in a strategy way, just to like, I just copied them over and over to kind of see how the game looks and how they read when they're all like next to each other. But technically, let's say that I took like this piece there, like when this piece fell, instead of putting it here, I like had put it down here. Then this connects. This would have been here. This connects. I could have taken that blue block and made sure that it placed down here. Connects. Could have placed that blue block here, connects. So let's say like all of these connect. Obviously in between there's stuff that goes from here to here. It doesn't go from here to here. But I would say that the rule is for like the blocks that like connect, the lowest level that the pieces touch, which would be this one. Everything that touches this level gets cleared. So this would go away, 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 this pink won't go away, this would go away. And then this would slot into being the next bottom row. You would clear those pieces, move these down, and then continue to put like ones on. I still have to decide. First of all, I still have to play that through to check the probabilities when I'm like pulling cards after I like finish like popping these designs onto cards to test. And then I would have to check the probabilities, the frequencies, etc. And then the like game speed to make sure it's not going too quickly, but also not taking too long. And it's like an actual like well-paced competitive game. So I genuinely think that could work. The cool thing is that I can also make minor adjustments to the probabilities and frequencies of things by adjusting the amount of which shape is like in the card deck with how many times. That was the most complex possible way I could have said that sentence. Like can you tell that it's midnight 30 again? Okay, I'll go to bed. I swear to God, I'll go to bed. But so this is going to be I think this is the first vlog that you guys get that's actually just a part 1. I don't count the AP for New in Town because that's an AP, not a vlog. And part 2 for that one is also coming soon, maybe even very soon, depending on how flare-up things go. But yeah, so that is where we're at with, I didn't give it a title. Very untypical of me to not have a title at this point. But maybe it'll come to me as I finish up the mechanics. We'll see. It is a really cute game. The vision is totally coming together, and I do think it'll be really fun to play with once I hammer out those final details of the subtraction mechanic. Because once I feel satisfied with that mechanic, I can finalize the win condition. Because right now it could be an amount of turns or an amount of tiles, and I don't want to rule out or decide on amount of tiles until I've tested how it works with these shapes and the subtraction rule that I'm thinking of using. So that is where we're gonna leave off on the tortilla chip Tetris analog game. Make sure to like and subscribe in order to not miss part 2 when it comes out. And next steps is that I have to print this and prototype it, then finalize the mechanics, like I said. But and then of course, like, also design a cover and give this baby a title, and then release it like my other board games. I love this little game. I think it's so fun. It was a really great project to tackle while I was relaxing and resting today, which is why we were here in my bed resting today. Usually the vlogs are in the office area, but today had to be a lay down and rest day. But technically my brain could continue working a bit for fun. It was fun work. All fun work. So yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.